Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name is Kyle, and in today's video, we're going to go over the most important fantasy football stats that you need to know before you draft your 2021 fantasy football teams. And we're going to be looking at an article that I found, and I don't remember who it was, but I found these stats a couple of years ago, and that's what's led me to do all the yard share opportunity and the target share studies that I've been doing this summer. But this is an article here on football.pitcherlist.com. Again, the link's in the description below. But this is an article written by Kenny Heitenhove. I don't know if I said his name right, but what he's basically doing is he found a way to measure what stats matter and correlate to fantasy football success. And if you've been watching a lot of my videos, if you haven't seen them yet, go back to the video, the YouTube channel main page, and you can find all of my data studies. But essentially, we're looking to see which stats are the most important for fantasy football. And I have all those correlated with my 2021 draft kit, the projections document that you guys can get at thefantasyfellowship.com. There's a link in the description below for that as well. But we're just going to review these charts and see which ones are the most important for quarterback, running back, wideout, and the tight end. So just looking at quarterback here, and you see the higher the percentage is a more direct correlation to where these guys finish in fantasy football. So the number one quarterback stat that we need to know about is passing touchdowns. The next one is passing yards. Completion, average yards is interesting. Red zone attempts, total air yards, deep ball attempts. Just look how low though. Rushing yards, not a very it's, I guess, as they categorize it, very strong versus strong. It's a good category for us to consider for fantasy football. But the main thing is if you can get a guy that's going to get a lot of passing touchdowns, a lot of passing yards, and then he's also going to get rushing yards, those are, to me, the three most important fantasy football stats for a quarterback. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at my projections, the passing touchdowns, and we'll look at the passing yards, and we'll also look at the rushing yards. But again, the touchdowns and the throwing yards are the most important. So right now, I have the green column here. I'm even going to zoom in just a little bit, and we'll kind of just let some of the stuff on the right hang off. But passing touchdowns, these are the guys, these are the players that you guys need to target for the most passing touchdowns. And it looks like I have 13 quarterbacks that are going to be throwing over 30 touchdowns. I only have 3 projected over 40. Now, Aaron Rodgers, of course, he is a huge question mark. If he does play for the Packers, we expect him to throw another, high 30s, maybe 40 some touchdowns. If he sits out, we'll kind of readjust the rankings for now. But as it sits, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, I have those guys over 40 touchdowns. And then you have this big list from 4 to 13 of guys that are going to throw in the 30s. Now, in the high 30s, I have Russell Wilson at 39, Dak Prescott at 37, Josh Allen at 34. These 3 quarterbacks are some of my favorite ones to target, especially Russ and Dak, because they're kind of like, Dak's maybe the 4th or 5th quarterback off the board. Wilson sometimes is the 5th, 6th, 7th quarterback off the board. So I've been drafting a ton of Russell Wilson. And then if you can see in the right column here where I have rushing yards, I kind of, made it look like the more rushing yards, the brighter the green color is going to be. And Russell Wilson sticks out. Josh Allen sticks out. So these guys, high passing touchdowns, high rushing yards, going to be a pretty productive fantasy football season for these guys. And then some guys in the lower 30s here that I think are interesting options. Of course, Justin Herbert, we expect him to be a QB1. Kirk Cousins, though, I think he threw 35 touchdowns last year. I have him at 32 this season. Matthew Stafford up at 31. And then a handful of guys here at 30. That's Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, and Ben Roethlisberger. Now, keep in mind, if you're seeing this and you think the touchdown totals are too high, we got an extra game this year. We got 17 games. So who knows? I might even be too low on some of these guys. But I did factor in a lot of different things in coming into these projections here. And then I just want to call out basically guys that are above 25. We'll kind of just cut it off at Fitzpatrick. But guys with, upper 20s, as a floor, I think Lamar Jackson at 29, Derek Carr, and Baker Mayfield. There's Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Carson Wentz, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think these guys are likely to throw at least 25 touchdowns. And then the rushing upside, you see the big dark green of Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray here. These are the kind of guys that can sway your league. If Lamar or Kyler Murray throw more than 30 touchdowns, we know they're going to run the ball. But if they can, think of Lamar MVP year when he threw 30 some touchdowns and he just, he ran for 1,000. Those are the holy 2 stats that really matter for fantasy football. And then the last one that we talked about is passing yards. Passing yards, one of the most consistent things that we can bank on. Guys that are going to be, having high floors. You want guys that are going to throw 250 to 300 yards minimum. So guys that I have basically projected, we'll kind of make the cutoff. We'll make it at 4,400 here. And we got 11 quarterbacks. That's Dak Prescott. I have him projected to lead the league in passing yards. Mahomes, Allen, Brady, Ryan, Herbert, Stafford, Burrow, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Russell Wilson, and Kirk Cousins. I co-signed drafting all of these guys here with the high yardage totals. And then when you factor in just the passing touchdowns and the rushing touchdowns, you get a pretty good idea of guys and thresholds that we need to hit on. So that's going to help us just, again, passing yards, passing touchdowns, and rushing yards. Those are the three stats for fantasy football quarterbacks that I think you need to just think a little bit more on. And really, when you're drafting a guy, is he going to hit 30 touchdowns? He's got a chance to be a quarterback one, I think. So that's the quarterback numbers. As we look at to the running back statistics, let me just zoom out so I get the whole chart here. 1 second. There we go. And can I do one more zoom? There we go. So these are the running back stats. The number one correlation to fantasy success is snaps. I don't really look too much at snaps. I use the second one called touches. And this is what I call opportunity share. You want a guy that's going to dominate touches in his offense. And touches, whether that's running the ball or getting the reception, all those add up. So the higher amount of touches that a player gets, the very likelihood that he's going to finish as a top 5, top 10 running back. And to me, that's the number one stat for running back is opportunity share. The next highest one looks like rushing yards. Again, that's our yard share stat. So we covered opportunity share, which is touches, and rushing yards, which is yard share. We could also kind of group all the yards into that too. Snap percentage, receptions. Receptions are very high. Those really do matter for PPR running backs. There's receiving yards. I wish there was a total yards measure because I think that would probably make that a little bit higher. So what do we care about for our running backs? We care about total opportunity, that's touches. We care about rushing yards, and we care about receptions and I guess receiving yards. So we're going to look at some studies here that I find most important. Notice that touchdowns kind of, top 8 on the list here. That's at 9th. Rushing touchdowns, not the most important stat. We care about guys who are going to get the ball and get yards. So let's first look at the number one opportunity, which is going to be total touches. So I'm going to filter here by touches, and let's just see who sticks to the top. Derrick Henry's got my number one projected. McCaffrey, Cook, Saquon Barkley. Joe Mixon coming in at number 5. If you're hesitant about getting Joe Mixon on your team, I think the way that I would build a Joe Mixon draft would be is if I get a running back round 1, I want Joe Mixon as my running back too, because if he does somehow finish in the top 5 of touches and he plays healthy the full season, you're looking at a potential top 5, top 10 running back with Mixon. At 6, I have Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler. No problem with any of those guys being running back 1s. There are some question marks, though, with Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery. We're not sure. I don't think those guys are going to be running back 1s this season. Probably best as your RB2. But then there's Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mike Davis, Antonio Gibson, Sanders, Darrell Henderson, the new Rams starting running back here. There's J.K. Dobbins, Damian Harris. So as we kind of get down the list, it gets a little bit more questionable. So the guys that dominate the touches at the top, that's who we care about. So that's the total opportunity. If I do filter by opportunity share, which again is the percentage amount of the amount of touches a player gets within his offense, that changes things a little bit, but not too drastically. And then let's see, the next most important stat is rushing yards. I actually care more about total yards. So what we're going to do here is, where is my total yards? Do I have that in here yet? Yeah, we have a total yards right here. So let me zoom out and we'll get that on the screen. So the total yards here on the far right. And as far as yardage goes, we got McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Saquon, Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor. Again, kind of a consensus top 10. I don't really, care where you draft these guys. I just fully advise trying to get 1 or 2 of them if you can. The next group of guys, Eckler, Najee Harris, Gibson, Clyde Edwards. There's David Montgomery. I think that's more about his ceiling is RB15. I don't think he's going to be a running back 1 this year, but I think he's a really useful RB2. J.K. Dobbins, same thing, RB2 potential. Sanders, Davis. Now, just notice how Josh Jacobs falls a little bit. He's not going to be a high yardage guy this year. I kind of see his ceiling is about running back 19. We know he's not really used in the passing game. There's Carson, Henderson, DeAndre Swift. So again, the total amount of yards, I'm I'm kind of grouping, this article had rushing yards and receiving yards right here. But again, both very, very strong indicators. I just lumped them together. And again, if you guys do purchase the 2021 draft kit, you're going to get access to all these projections, and you can click on, say you want to look at the running backs. This is kind of how it looks. You can click on opportunity yard and target share, and you'll see what I have all into there, as well as receivers and tight ends. So everything is integrated into the draft kit for you. And then I guess the most important last stat we need to know, and this is going to be receptions. This is more, I think, when you get towards the middle rounds, that's when receptions, I start looking at who's going to catch the ball. Because we kind of know the guys that are going to catch the ball a lot in the first couple rounds, but some running backs that can hit over 40 catches, we've seen some value with PPR backs. So, of course, McCaffrey, Eckler, Kamara, Barkley, those are going to be the consensus top 4 guys in receptions. But then you get a Chase Edmonds and Naheem Hines. They got some PPR RB2 flex value. There's Elliott. Aaron Jones, I think he's in for a career high in receptions this season. There's J.D. McKissick, who caught a crap load of balls last year with Alex Smith. Mixon, Swift, James White, ETN, Clyde Edwards, Cook. Basically, this entire top 20, we got a bunch of guys around 40 here. This top 20, they're all going to have a pretty high floor with PPR numbers. So I like a lot of these names. And then if we move to receiver, this one's interesting. Again, this is for PPR, but look what the #1 stat that matters for receivers and where they finish. It's receiving yards. Targets is next, receptions is next. They're all really close within 1%, but receptions or receiving yards is the #1 stat. So let's take a peek real quick and see who I have leading the league in yards this season. And a lot of times I break ties to guys that are going to get yards because that typically means more big plays. You want guys that are game changers. So DeAndre Hopkins, I have him leading the league in yards this year. Diggs, Ridley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf. There's Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Terry McLaurin clocking in at number 9. Michael Thomas, DJ Moore, Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper. I don't know if you saw the news today, but Cooper was placed on the PUP list today. We're going to monitor that ankle injury. I don't like the sounds of it. He's going to basically be not running for the next 2-3 weeks, it sounded like, and we're just going to have to really monitor that. He had a surgery in January on his ankle. Then he had some irritation back in OTAs, and he had another little cleanup thing. So Cooper, man, I'm kind of nervous about Cooper, and now I'm leaning all in on CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. So those are my preferred Dallas Cowboy targets. But basically, if you can draft as many players that you think are going to go over 1,000 yards. If you can get 3 or 4 of those guys, you're going to have a very good fantasy season. And then I guess the next important stat for receivers, it says it's targets. So targets and receptions, we care about how much volume of players you want to get. If I just filter by targets, Stephon Diggs, Hopkins, Adams, Thomas, Allen Robinson, those are the top 5. Some other guys here. You got Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson coming in at number 11. A.J. Brown, Robbie Anderson, Justin Jefferson, Bob Woods, Tyler Lockett, a ton of guys here. Basically, if you can get someone that's projected over 120 targets, I have a pretty good feeling about them. So again, that's receiving yards, targets, receptions. Those are the numbers you got to be looking at for your wide receivers. And then just notice touchdowns, not the most important stat, but they do kind of shift things if your guy's not going to get a lot of yards or receptions. So let's kind of focus on the tight ends now, and we'll kick this video off here. The #1 stat, again, it's receiving yards. Receptions and targets are next, but this 99% hit rate, you want to draft tight ends that are going to get a boatload of yards. So let's filter this by yards and see who I have as our leaders. We'll kind of just look at the top 15 or so. And then with this, of course, Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, consensus top 3, but Kyle Pitts coming in at number 4. I think I was kind of higher on TJ Hawkinson maybe a month ago. I'm starting to fall back on him. I almost prefer Kyle Pitts in that 5th round range. We know we've never seen a tight end get drafted 4th overall, the first non-quarterback off the board. That is pretty insane. He's going to step right in, and he's not really a tight end. You're basically getting a stud slot receiver that can handle all the middle of the field targets. So I have Pitts at 825 yards, and if you watch some of the old the other videos that I put out on the studies, you want a tight end that any tight end projected over 700 yards is almost guaranteed a top 10 finish. So that's Pitts, Hawkinson, Andrews, and Noah Fant. I have all 4 of those guys over 700 yards, and then some guys that are close: Tyler Higbee, Dallas Goedert, Logan Thomas, Mike Gesicki, Jonnu Smith, Irv Smith. Irv Smith is growing on me, you guys. I missed kind of drafting him the last month or so, but I've been really ramping up my best ball drafts and getting Irv Smith as much as I can. And then Blake Jarwin, again, he was able to practice today. He didn't go on the PUP list, which is very encouraging. We're going to watch his training camp. And then Bob Tunyon here, some guys that are close like Ferkser, Ingram, Ebron, Everett. But again, yards, that's the most important stat for receivers and tight ends. So I hope this helps. If you guys have questions, want to check out the 2021 draft kit, please do. Leave me comments. Let me know what you guys think of this. Of these stats, which ones are more important? Which ones are more important to you? What do you guys find yourself looking at when you're drafting players? Just curious about the conversation. So thank you guys so much for your time. We'll see you in another video. Peace.